would like, if I may, to take you on a strange journey.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Real Estate Realities with the Rebel Broker. My name is Robert Whitelaw, and I am the Rebel Broker. Licensed real estate broker in the state of California, member of the National Association of Realtors. But please, don't hold that against me. Welcome to it, folks. There are a few little changes going on in my small little universe in terms of just my approaches to a variety of different things, particularly in my marketing and some other things. I'm not sure how much you guys as an audience would care too much about that. I'm sure there's a group of you who are the real estate who are real estate agents who might be a little bit more interested. But this is me going through kind of what I tend to do every now and then, which is completely reviewing everything that's going on with my online presence and all that kind of wonderful stuff. If anyone has an interest in that, that would probably be something I would share in the Rebel Underground. So if you'd like to join the Rebel Underground, the easiest way to do that is to text the word Rebel Broker to the number 44222. That's text the word Rebel Broker to the number 44222. Or you can go to therebelbroker.com, and in the show notes for today's show, and also I believe there's a button at the website these days that will let you join the Rebel Underground that way. So if that's something you're interested in, I might go ahead and do a quick, either a video or maybe just a bullet point thing of the things that I'm looking into in terms of just getting a handle on that sort of stuff, which is a little bit more focused, not so much on real estate investors, but the real estate agents themselves. All right. The other way to get in touch, the best way is at the website. Go to therebelbroker.com. From there, you can click on contacts in the menu bar. Send along any ideas, suggestions, observations, or questions that you might have. Happy to reply. I do appreciate all of you who reach out and share your thoughts. And I'm really, I'm also, one of the things that's on my list to do is to start providing some YouTube specific content. So right now, the folks on YouTube really just get this show as a YouTube video. And I've been kind of stunned by the number of folks who have decided to consume the show that way. So it's going to be coming. There's going to definitely be some YouTube specific content coming. So keep an eye out for that. If you would like to find my content on YouTube, you can follow the link from therebelbroker.com. Just go to the front page on the right-hand side. There's sort of a little palette of different icons. One of them is the YouTube icon. Click on that one, and it'll take you to the YouTube page for you to check out yourself. Two interesting things. The big news today is our another research bit from Homeunion. It's one of those great things that lays out return on investment. What are the top communities, the top zip codes to invest in that have shown the highest rate of return? And of course, that's where we get drawn, right? Unless you're a flip person, which obviously you might look at some different stats. You might want to look at how many people are moving into an area, the demand for homes for sale, that kind of cool stuff. This report also includes that. We're not going to cover that really in this particular show, but I will include a link to the report, and there is some very juicy data in there that covers all kinds of cool things. And the folks at Homeunion really put out some great research. I also recently took their investment search tool for a test drive. Not really my speed. I think there's better ways to go, but it does let you sort of be a little bit more focused. I think if the scope of what it searched was better, I'd be much more inclined to make it a regular tool. But at this point, it's really something to check. Maybe I wouldn't suggest you not give it a test drive, and maybe turn on an automatic search and get alerts for when something pops up in the areas they bother to search in. But I'd really I'd really approach it the way we've been doing it, where we have discussions here about what the latest data shows are the greatest places for return on investment or other things, and then use that as your jumping off point to find good investments. And on the flip side, if you don't want to use their tool, Homeunion's blog is awesome, and there's all kinds of different stuff that I think is worth your time in terms of reading. It's one of those sites I visit regularly to read their content. I think they've got pretty good stuff. Okay. First article we're going to talk about today is coming to us from Redfin. Redfin Housing Demand Index slipped in June from May's all-time high. That is kind of interesting. I would have expected June's numbers to sort of remain relatively flat. But here's what I think's happening. I think we're simply seeing inventory shrinkage. And as I look around at what I'm seeing, I think that's what the case is. So this is not a case of buyers not buying. This is a case of buyers buying what they can buy, and there's simply fewer things to buy in most markets. Now, as I mentioned earlier this week or late last week, I'm not seeing that in towns like Gilroy. I am seeing increases in the number of listings. I'm actually seeing the things available to look at increasing. And there's an awful lot of homes available, even in South San Jose. I've broadened my investment search up to South San Jose, but the prices are obviously a little bit prohibitive for a lot of folks because we're talking average prices up above the $800,000 mark. But let's talk a little bit about their numbers first. Compared to May, about the same number of Redfin customers, so obviously this is data that they're getting through their website, requested home tours in June. But fewer made offers in the face of double-digit supply declines. So they're pointing to what I think is the right answer here. The right answer is not there is less interest on the part of buyers. Home tours were requested. Buyers were out there trying to do what buyers want to do, but the supply is just not meeting the demand. So that's really what's feeding this in terms of a graphed decline that really just represents a lack of supply. Okay, so if we take a look at, they've got some very interesting charts. Their first chart is the Redfin Housing Demand Index. And in this case, given what is causing this decline, it's hard to describe that as a demand index. It would be more, I think, appropriate to refer to it as a supply index, since what's really influencing this number is the supply. Their index fell 4.3% from May's all-time high to 130 in June. Homebuyer demand was up 27.8% year over year. The demand index is based on thousands of Redfin customers requesting home tours and writing offers. A level of 100 represents the historical average for the 3-year period from January 2013 to December 2015. Let's see. Anything else really sexy here? And this is, if you go ahead and go to this article, again, I'll have a link to it in the show notes for today's show. They've got sort of a nice little slideshow here of the different communities and what the demand index has done. And there are a few places that are beating the trend. For instance, the demand index took a huge jump. I mean, like if you compare it to years in San Diego, it's up to 150, and the last high where it was even close to this was way back in 2012. So there's just nothing there really matching the current demand in San Diego. Another market that's kind of bucking it is San Francisco at 114, not the highest for the year. If we look all the way back to the 2015 timeframe, it's up around 145 in terms of their estimated demand. Seattle is kind of trending up in general. Washington, D.C. took a dip as well, but still only a few percentage points off of it. It peaked at 180. It's down to about 170, but that's the highest it's been since 2012. So it's just been steady increases there. Baltimore, Maryland still increases. Boston, Massachusetts is relatively flat. Chicago, Illinois, and Chicago is another one of those towns that we've talked a lot about ground truth. We've talked a lot about cities like Detroit and Chicago. Chicago continues to be a dominant investment magnet. A lot of the reports that we read really get into how Chicago is a great place to go. And in terms of the demand index, they're showing pretty consistent increases since we had one point where we peaked and then went back down a bit. But going all the way back to July of 2016, so about a year ago, we've seen nothing but steady increases. Now, we haven't hit the highest points, which were reached in let's see, April, May of 2016, and then going back all the way to beginning of 2013 was really where we hit the peak of demand in Chicago. Let's see. Denver saw an increase, but that was after a relatively big decrease in previous months. And a lot of fluctuation, a lot of weird fluctuation in Denver where it starts relatively low, takes a big jump, goes way, way down, and actually bottoms out in June of 2016. And then now in 2017, where it was down around 25, and now it's up to 164. So Denver's seen a lot of fluctuation. Los Angeles, California is actually up, but not up in terms of overall historical. It's trending. If you average out all of these specific points that are measured here, it's a trending upward scenario. If things stay to form, you would expect their next measured point to be a little lower than what it is, just because that seems to be what's happening in a measurement basis. Phoenix saw the largest decrease in home buyer activity in June, with its demand index down 33.6% from May, driven by a 21.6% decrease in Redfin customers requesting tours. So that's an interesting one to note. Not only fewer buyers out there appearing to show interest in viewing a home, but so a decrease in that, but then also a 43.9% decrease in the offers that are made. However, the inventory there was also down 15.5%. So given that, and given the correlation between buyers requesting, right? Now, you can request a tour. You can have 100 people request a tour on one home. So it makes sense in a situation where the demand is extremely high to see the folks requesting tours actually continue to increase, even while the actual number of purchases that happen go down, which was sort of the national trend that they pointed to. But we're seeing the opposite here in Phoenix. We're seeing them both going down. We're seeing a decrease in customers looking to see homes and a decrease in the number of homes actually going into contract, which could spell moving into a period where Phoenix becomes a lot more interesting in terms of a potential investment. Now, one thing that's super interesting about Phoenix is if you look at the data on Phoenix going back historically, back to from the end of 2012 forward, things are relatively flat. This whole things jumping in demand in the Phoenix market is really relatively new. We peaked in June, really, of 2007. So just within the last couple of months, we peaked in Phoenix in terms of the demand. But historically, going back years, it has been relatively flat, sort of just hovering between about 125 and 75 and bouncing up and down. And then it really soared once we got past, say, April, May. It just soared and peaked in June. And now here in July, we're seeing it having dropped back down to 137, which gave us this interesting thing that is bucking the trend nationally and showing both interest in viewing homes and actual purchases in homes having dropped. But we've also continued to see the drop in inventory. So I think moving forward, it presents some interesting options for Phoenix. Phoenix is kind of on my short list of places that I wouldn't mind looking at. I like it for a variety of reasons, and there's also some things about it that make it less than super. I'm very much drawn to trying to find communities where I think there's a lot of upside growth for future businesses. And I think that in a lot of ways, Phoenix weather works again. I think it's a little too hot for a lot of folks. I think if you're looking for new businesses to crop up and looking for new areas to do it in, I think Phoenix could present challenges. Now, my experience with Phoenix is a little bit limited. I dated someone who lived in Phoenix for a while. So for about 6 or 7 months, I was spending an awful lot of time in Phoenix. And it just wasn't one of those places I ever saw myself staying just because of the weather. Los Angeles had the largest increase in its demand index, up 27.1% month over month. The number of customers requesting tours increased 34.9% from May, and the number writing offers grew by 19.4%. So inventory was down by a relatively modest amount 5.7. So when you see numbers like that, that also points to this idea in Los Angeles that even though we did see a little bit of a drop in inventory, we still saw more people wanting to see homes. We saw more people running offers on homes. So that would spell out to me that we are dipping into the current inventory enough that we're really shortening the month's worth of inventory that are currently on hand in Los Angeles. So super aggressive, probably not great for buyers. You'd still have to look really long and hard for that amazing deal in that particular marketplace. All right. I'm going to take a quick break right now. When we come back, we are going to run down that top 20 list of the best housing markets for investing in real estate. So don't go away. We'll be right back to talk about that in just a second.
Are you ready to jump in and start your search for your first investment property? Maybe you've decided that it's time to own your own home, or maybe you're ready to sell your home and move on to something new. No matter what your goal is, the Rebel Broker can help. That's right, aside from hosting this show, I am also the owner-broker of Whitelaw & Sons Real Estate Services right here in Silicon Valley. With over 25 years experience serving Silicon Valley, Morgan Hill, San Martin, and Gilroy, I or one of my great agents can help you achieve your goals in real estate. So if you're ready to look into taking that next step towards achieving your real estate goals, point your browser at www.soldbyrobert.com. That's www.soldbyrobert.com and get in touch. Let me show you how I will earn your business and your respect. Again, that's www.soldbyrobert.com, or you can call me at 408-852-0525. California Bureau of Real Estate ID 00984-909.
Welcome back, everyone. We are running down the list of the 20 best housing markets in the United States for investing in real estate. This is coming to us through Homeunion. They calculated the total annualized return, including projected appreciation and cash flow, of single-family rentals for more than 200,000 neighborhoods in its database using their proprietary methodology. It then eliminated neighborhoods with an average school rating below the 70th percentile based on data from Maponics. The markets with the highest returns on an average school rating in the 70th percentile or higher made it to the top of the list. And what's interesting is the average annual returns over 5 years range from 5.4% to 8.1%. Now, the last time we looked at this list, and I'm not sure it was actually from Homeunion, the last time we did this, we actually had a couple of communities where we were seeing, wasn't it 15 to 18% in the top producing communities in terms of return? And if I'm not mistaken, that when we did that one, those were properties that were just based on 1 year. If you had purchased the property a year ago, your rate of return would have been those numbers, which was pretty amazing. And I remember Tennessee figuring prominently in that particular report. But for this one, this is more about zip codes. So we'll go ahead and take a look. The number 20 zip code is 46280, North Indianapolis, Indiana. The metro area is obviously Indianapolis. The annualized total return was 5.4% with a school rating of 71.9. Next on the list, number 19, 91602, North Hollywood, California. Los Angeles is the metro area with an annualized total return of 5.4%. School ranking 71.4%. And I would, I'm not sure this is an area where I would jump right in. Things are just because with the demand numbers we talked about in the previous article, anything in the Los Angeles area, I think you're going to want to have a lot of time spent analyzing those numbers to see if it makes sense. I just get the feeling that an investment made now would definitely be at a peak that might be regrettable down the road, but just a sidebar from me on that. Number 18, 73003, Edmond, Oklahoma. A lot of these are communities I've never heard of on any of our reports before. I can't even remember the last time Oklahoma figured highly on one of these. The metro area is Oklahoma City with an annualized total return of 5.4% and a school rating of 90. The next on our list, I believe we're at 17, is 63043, Maryland Heights, Missouri, which is in the metro area of St. Louis. Annualized total return of 5.5%, school rating 71.9. Number, are we at 16? 85259 North Scottsdale, Arizona. Now, this is part of the Phoenix metro area. And remember, we've had these areas appear before. We've had Scottsdale and a bunch of other communities that literally border Phoenix appear on various lists in terms of a broad appeal in terms of return on investment. The metro area is Phoenix. Annualized total return 5.5%. School rating 88%. 77059 is next on our list. Clear Lake City, Texas, part of the metro area of Houston. Annualized total return of 5.6%. School rating 76%. And I'll tell you, I think Texas remains one of the top places to put on your short list in terms if you're someone who, if you live there, great. I mean, it makes it easier for you. If you're not, if you're someone like me and you live in California and you're contemplating investing in other areas because you just don't think your money can get you enough to make it worth it here in California, or you share my concern that we're about to hit a peak and it doesn't make sense to invest at this point, I think Texas is a great shortlister for you in terms of states to look at. I was reading an article yesterday that was really talking about where people are going. And, the only problem with Texas right now is it's just got too dang many Californians in it. An awful lot of folks are leaving California and going to Texas. One can only hope that those folks adopt whatever Texas is doing is working. So I hope that all those folks from California that are moving to Texas aren't bringing the attitude of, boy, you guys really need to learn how to do things right over here. Because if those folks think about why they left California, they may want to just shut up and do more listening and watching than telling anyone how to do things in Texas, because they sure have been doing a much better job of it than what's been going on in California. Houston, total return 5.6%, and 76 was the school rating. And here's another Texas community, 75022 Flower Mound, Texas. Never heard of it. Metro area, Dallas, obviously heard of that. Now, Dallas is another one of those cities that I think is a great bet. I've talked about Austin, Texas, and some of the outlying areas. I like Round Rock a whole lot. That figured on a list a few years back, and my pitch at that time was to really consider that one. In fact, I considered it such a good pick. My goal was to travel out there and look for investment properties and possibly even buy one. The trip never happened. Ended up being one of my biggest regrets, because sure enough, the following year when we did a review of markets that did ridiculously well, what was the number one community that did insane growth and great rent return rates? Round Rock, Texas. So, that's always, just need to take my own advice a little bit more. Metro area was Dallas, as I mentioned. Annualized total returns 5.6%. School rating 84. Next on our list is 44023 Chagrin Falls, Ohio. The metro area here is Cleveland. And again, Cleveland is another one of those cities that keeps popping up on different lists. I've actually had a couple of listeners who are investors in Cleveland who are really telling me that needs to be on my short list, that I need to stop being in love with Tennessee so much and start considering Ohio. And I got to tell you, the numbers I see are pretty encouraging. Maybe we'll do a show where we take some of these cities and locations and we focus on just analyzing those markets and seeing what comes up, because some of these are just really good opportunities for investors. Annualized total return is 5.6% in Chagrin Falls, Ohio. School rating 70.8. Next on our list, 34677 Oldsmar, Florida, part of the Tampa metro area. I lived near Tampa for a while. I lived on the Courtney Campbell Causeway for a while. For those of you who are in Tampa, you probably know where that is. Way back in the olden days, I actually lived in the Residence Inn on Courtney Campbell Causeway for a long time before I relocated to Deerfield Beach, Florida, which is down by Fort Lauderdale. And I like Tampa. I think Tampa's a great town. So I would absolutely consider that a reasonable alternative to some of the more challenging communities. Now, and by challenging communities, I mean Tampa tends to be more of a less stressful, I think, investment environment. If you're worried about things like hurricanes, particularly if you're investing from a distance, if you're worried about a lot of the crazy stuff that goes on in Florida, Tampa tends to be a little bit less annoying. I know when I lived in Florida, it was right after Hurricane Andrew, and it was nuts. The swath of damage was ridiculous. The recovery took a while. And I know that if I had an investment there and I did not live in Florida and wasn't within a reasonable distance to go and tend to my investment, I would be freaked out. And I think Tampa gives you a little bit more peace of mind when it comes to investing in some of these areas where weather could be a concern. Now, as I said, the metro area is Tampa. The annualized total return is 5.7% with a school rating of 78.6%. Next on our list is 97224 King City, Oregon, which is in the Portland metro area. Annualized total return 5.8%, school rating 81.9%. Portland is having a bit of an identity crisis. There are so many California people moving to Portland that you're actually seeing kind of this Californians go home movement happening in Portland. I was even reading an article the other day where someone who had migrated there 6 months ago or 8 months ago and purchased a home actually had their home and car vandalized by someone with graffiti referring to how they should go back to California. So that's unfortunate. I don't think that's a common thing. There's probably some sort of an altercation that led to that. But I do know that there are plenty of folks in Portland who are about not letting quite so many Californians come into the city. In terms of an investment, though, it looks like it has some pretty good opportunities. 30078 Snellville, Georgia, which is a area that is near the metro area of Atlanta. Atlanta has figured prominently on tons of our different reports in terms of areas that make a lot of sense. I think Atlanta makes sense just from the standpoint of it being a hub for all kinds of stuff. It's a major metro area, and I think that opportunities can absolutely be found in those areas. It's just really a question of the barrier to entry for you. Is this an area that you can get into that is financially reasonable for you? The annualized return was 5.8% with school ratings of 72.5. Next, we're back to Ohio, 45255 Forestville, Cherry Grove, Ohio, near the metro area of Cincinnati. Annualized total return of 5.9%, school rating 75.7. I don't know anything about Cincinnati, but I'm almost sure that the last time we talked about high return on investment areas, Cincinnati was on that list. So absolutely worth it to you to take a look at it. And don't forget, these are all things you can figure out for yourself with just bouncing around on Realtor.com, Trulia, and Zillow. Trulia is typically my go-to. If you're not a member of the Rebel Underground, the video that's currently available to subscribers under the Rebel Underground is all about taking what we talk about on this show and being able to look at the bigger picture and drill down to a more focused area within these metros for you to figure out what areas you want to invest in. So join the Rebel Underground, text the word Rebel Broker to the number 44222 on your cell phone, get access to that video, and then treat this show as a leaping off point. If you live near enough to one of these, or you do business in one of these areas, or you feel comfortable with the proximity enough that you'd be willing to travel or make this your first long distance investment, take advantage of those tips that I provide and jump in and start seeing what metro areas make sense in terms of finding the sub areas within the metro that might make sense for you to do some investing. Next on our list, 60016 Des Plaines, Illinois. I'm guessing the metro area is Chicago, and it sure enough is. Annualized total return 6%, school rating 76.4. So Chicago, again, is figuring very highly on an awful lot of indicators of good places to look for investments. I think we hit another one already on this list. So it's one of those areas that makes sense if you are comfortable with that city. Next on our list, 66223 Overland Park, Kansas, in the Kansas City metro area. Annualized total return was 6.2% with school rating of 97.4%. Next on our list, we're jumping back to Tennessee. And this isn't going to be much of a surprise, I think. 37062 Fairview, Tennessee, in the Nashville metro area with an annualized total return of 6.5%, school rating of 70.6. Now, I don't know anything about Fairview, and Nashville has been mentioned on lists. I've been lucky enough to talk to folks who invest in a couple of different cities, in Tennessee who have had nothing but great things. Not only great things just to say anecdotally, like, yeah, you should go and invest in Nashville or Tennessee or somewhere in the state, but talk about it, discussing results. I mean, if you go back with any of the last two interviews we did on this show, both of those folks are from Tennessee. And Miss Nicely, go check her out. I think it was Whitney Nicely. Whitney was her first name. If you check out our interview with her, she had some amazing success. And I think in a way that's interesting because these opportunities seemed to present themselves in a pretty aggressive way. So if you're there to take advantage of those, why not? There are folks that are doing exceptionally well in terms of being able to put together an amazing portfolio of real estate in Tennessee. Next on our list, 33327 Weston, Florida, part of the Fort Lauderdale metro area with an annualized total return of 6.6% with a school rating of 70.5. You know what's funny about Fort Lauderdale is it is one of those cities where my rule about condos being the least desirable would probably go by the wayside. I like the idea of not maintaining a ton of stuff in a place like Florida, and also knowing what challenges you face in Fort Lauderdale. We talked about weather a little bit. I like the idea of only having to worry about what's inside my unit in a place like this. And also, if you're willing to embrace a condo, the odds of you getting waterfront or getting some amazing views is much, much better. And those are the reasons people want to live here. So I think a condo takes on a different feel. A condo in San Jose is not as sexy as a condo in Fort Lauderdale. There's also the Intercoastal Waterway, so it's not just a question of whether or not you're actually on the Atlantic. You can also be on the Intercoastal, which is also beautiful. So there's a lot of interesting opportunities there, and it gives you a potential to have your hands on a property that satisfies the main reasons why people would go to Fort Lauderdale in the first place. Next on our list, 33158 Palmetto Bay, Florida. This is in the Miami metro area. Total annualized return 6.8%. School rating 83.9%. Now, I've been to Palmetto Bay. When I lived in Florida, there was a great little bar in Palmetto Bay that I used to go to. And that is a strip of land that is really between the Atlantic and the Intercoastal. And it's amazing. It's a great destination spot. So if you can go and find out what the barrier to entry is in terms of costs, I think this is a great way to go. We're still seeing some interesting things happening with Miami prices, and there may be some good opportunities to be had there as we've continued to see the luxury end of the market really not be very robust. All right, next, 48322 West Bloomfield Township, Michigan. Metro area is Detroit. Annualized return on investment is 6.9 with school ratings of 74.4. It's hard to argue. There have now been so many different reports about Detroit, and I've always really stressed that if you are tempted to invest in a place like Detroit, absolutely you need to know the ground truth there. I would never, ever invest in Detroit unless I had physically went and spent enough time that I felt comfortable with the markets, and then I would absolutely stick to the neighborhoods and markets that I am comfortable with. There's a lot of challenges with Detroit. Detroit, remember, is in Illinois. Illinois is having all kinds of financial problems. And what concerns me about situations like that is when you tend to look at the past of who gets chased when a state needs money, it tends to be folks who own property, and it tends to be folks who make over a certain amount of money. So those are just things that in the back of my head would be a concern. The state of Illinois is bankrupt. They are virtually at junk bond status. So anything in Illinois, I think, is something to be cautious about. But there are clearly some opportunities to be had here. And who knows, a lot of what's going on with the state in general may also feed into this scenario where you're finding yourself where in chaos, there is profit, right? So maybe that's something that's playing into what will make Detroit a good investment, because at some point the state has to come on the other side of this current problem, right? All right, 19035 Gladwin, Pennsylvania. Metro area for them is Philadelphia. Annualized total return is 6.9%. School rating 86.9%. Again, Philadelphia is one of those metro areas that we've talked about before in terms of desirability. It seems to be a place that has great returns. If I'm not mistaken, it was in the top 10 list when we did this about 4 months ago in terms of rate of return, which was pretty impressive. So there's clearly some good markets to be had in Philadelphia if you're looking to invest. And, if you're going to go for the downtown Philly area, it's another one of those places where I would not really have a problem with a condo. But again, get ground truth to decide whether or not that makes sense for you. Next on our list, we're right back to Florida, 33434, Hamptons at Boca Raton, Florida. Metro area is West Palm Beach. And this is the number one community with 8.1% annualized total return, school rating of 87.9%. If I remember correctly, this is not an inexpensive place to go. I was doing real estate as an investor back when I lived in Florida. I spent a lot of time looking at investment properties, and I'll tell you, I wish I had a little bit more money right after Hurricane Andrew, because there were some great opportunities right after that happened. But I'm not sure this would be a great place for you to start your search. It does rate the highest in terms of annualized total return. But I tell you what we might do. Tomorrow's show, I think we'll pick a couple of different areas from this list, and we'll get down and dirty with an analysis. We'll use our skills that we've learned to sort of drill down into different areas, figure out what makes sense, and see which one of these communities gives us not only a good return on investment, but also a low barrier so we can get as much bang for the buck as possible. All right, folks. As always, the goal is to give you good information, to give you good jumping off points or things to think about within your own real estate investment strategies. I hope we've managed to do that a little bit today. I know we hit a relatively long list. Normally, I would have cut this list in half and then also looked at a couple of the communities in more detail. But I wanted to give you a wide range of options. I think that as we start to wrap up summer, as we get to the end of this thing where the season is hot, we're going to see markets softening a little bit in a lot of areas. Winter tends to be a time when you can find some better deals. So if any of these areas sound interesting to you, start that work now. Start doing some groundwork in terms of just sitting at your desk and analyzing via the internet these marketplaces to see what areas sound good to you, and then track it as we head into winter and see if you can't find yourself some great deals. Thanks for listening, everybody. I'll talk to y'all next time.